Hello, Stephen Pruitt, Commissioner of Education for the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Welcome. We appreciate you tuning in today for us to talk a little bit about course codes, a path toward equitable access. With me, I have Amanda Ellis, our Associate Commissioner, or as I just like to refer to her, as our Chief Academic Officer.
Hello. Nice to be here.
Well, we're glad that you're here. So we're going to talk a little bit today about these course codes, and we'll talk about it in a little bit more detail. Amanda's been really spearheading this with her staff, and I know some of you at this point have clicked on this button and you're starting to watch it and go, course codes, why do I really care? So we're going to spend a little time. So before you click off or mute, I would encourage you to do this because this is actually going to be a pretty big deal. If you don't see that by the end of this, then maybe you need to call me and we'll have a separate chat. But we started this process almost exactly a year ago. And there's a lot of reasons for it. We'll talk about these shortly. You know, there's some basic reasons that are really important. We are now going to have a course code system that's aligned to national course codes. It'll allow for better portability of courses into and out of Kentucky. It should actually help our counselors and help our registrars and our schools to be able to have a better feel for what kids know when they come into our state, and also communicate to other states what they have. But there's actually a deeper reason for this. I know that in past, KDE has done surveys about course codes, and they tend to rate pretty low. In fact, Amanda, I think that when we first started talking about this was one of your concerns, was that
That's
people
right.
didn't care so much about this.
That's right. It being a priority of the department or the agency, but not always a priority of the schools, especially at the younger grade levels, because we tended not to have a real connection with the purpose of those codes outside of local needs, but nothing really aligned, except for at the high school level for honors courses or
Right.
maybe scholarship opportunities.
Right.
That's right.
So going into this, there's a few items here that are really important, and this wasn't something that we did just because we felt like we needed another project. Goodness knows Amanda's shop does not need just another project. But this really is about equity. When we talk about our students graduating in Kentucky, the reality is that it's awfully difficult to talk about whether students actually got the same equity. Many of you who have heard me speak before, you've heard me talk about the issue of Algebra 1 versus Algebra 1 Light versus Algebra 1 Low Carb. What we know from research is that if we give students the expectation and the opportunity, that they'll rise to that occasion. So here are a few things about these course codes that are really important. First of all, they're going to ensure equitable opportunity and access to research-based student experience that impacts student success. They're going to be an alignment of standards to courses. Now that's new. Historically, we've had a set of course codes, and the districts kind of chose what was there. The reality is we live in a world now where there's so much portability between districts and outside of states that we've got to be a little bit more aligned to that. Now K-8 was okay because K-8 did tend to have grade by grade. High school, however, it was the Wild West. So for the first time, we're going to have actual standards attached to these courses. The other part, which probably most of you are going to care about a lot, is the alignment to the new accountability system. If you don't do this well, it is going to have an impact on the accountability system. This is where we are going to start really taking good hard looks at what students are having access to and what they're going to have opportunity to do in the future. So the outcomes of this project is first of all, we assign Kentucky academic standards to the courses. Again, the days of Algebra 1, Algebra 1 Light, and Algebra 1 Low Carb have got to go away. It doesn't mean that we don't have opportunities for gifted and talented. It doesn't mean that we don't have opportunities to do acceleration. What it simply means is Algebra 1 is Algebra 1. And we need to have students prepared to take those courses, and we need to feel comfortable that when they take them that they have received the same content that everybody else has. The course codes have been polished to reflect the alignment of standards resulting in new course codes. We are discontinuing a lot of course codes. Now, that's going to cause some stress in some of the districts. You agree with that, Amanda?
Absolutely. So, one of the things I think of, Stephen, is with the new course codes, we really have really discontinued. That's been the big push on that, quite honestly. It's important that our codes are consistent and aligned, because if we are expecting districts to use this for accountability and to ensure quality and access for students, we need to have a tight system. So what we have done is really work through the discontinuation of courses that mean the same but maybe have 25 different titles. And so we've really worked to narrow that focus. Now, does that mean we've aligned to every single elective? No. We focused really on the standards right now, and we'll have a process for electives, of course. But this really goes K-12. Yes. Which is very different. So I know you may want to speak to that, but it's very, very important that people understand we're not just trying to get rid of codes, but that true alignment to standards really eliminates all the extra that we've offered in the past that have made it very gray to know if students are truly getting the standards or if they're just repeating the same type of course over and over without access to advanced mathematics or English or social studies or science or the arts, that it's not that repetitive course just under a new name.
So you pointed out something really important. I just want to reemphasize it for our audience. This isn't just about codes.
Not at all.
This is actually about standards.
Correct.
And so, that's a really important aspect. Now, it's going to affect how you do your work. But when we're messaging this and we're talking about this to our communities, I hope that we don't spend too much time just talking about the course codes. But that, what Amanda said there is really, really important. That this is really about ensuring that equitable access for each kid. And if I remember right, we had, I think, 17 biology courses.
Easily.
And yet that's an EOC course.
Correct.
So when were kids taking the EOC?
It all depended. So it was very much up to the district, and in some scenarios students were taking 2 or 3 biology courses, others were taking 1. There was a lot of inconsistency and really access to other courses, or we're not even sure of the depth. And so it really was so loose that we really could not ensure that students were receiving all the standards as as we would promote and suggest that should happen, and really that students have access to, that they have the right to all standards. And
all the research I've ever read has been, and SREB probably has been one of the biggest groups that have done this research, is that while we pretend that longer time to take a course helps a kid, it actually just results in longer time
Correct.
to forget.
And we don't see any positive research around that longer is more.
Yeah.
Because it's really about the quality of instruction, not the seat time. And so really looking deeply into what is being taught in courses is extremely important. And really with the development of EOCs, which I know you'll talk about, it's really going to be beautifully aligned to our standards, which we've promised for a long time since you came. And so now this is just another step towards the alignment of the use of our standards, when they're taught, and how they're assessed.
How important is it going to be that teachers know about these course codes?
Extremely important. Teachers and counselors must know what's going on, their purpose, and their principles. This is not a clerical decision. This is not a clerical project. This is truly a strategic project to ensure that the courses and the standards that are being offered to all students are truly aligned and the dots are connected. And so it's really up to the school districts on the quality of that work and the quality of that data.
So we're updating these course codes. There will also be course descriptions for each of these courses. Again, just going back to the teacher aspect of it, if our teachers don't know that their courses are changing, we're not going to see a lot of change. And given that we are making such a big commitment to closing the achievement gap, it's going to be really important that our teachers are aware that a course they taught in the past may not be the exact same course, and there needs to be some conversation around that.
And I want to point out that we do have EPSB as an active partner in that, so we do know that the courses also align to certification. So they have been in partnership with us since the beginning to ensure that alignment. So the lead report will still exist, but it'll be even more streamlined on that. And so information's coming out, and that's why we're doing this now, to really ensure districts and schools have time to make sure they have the right people teaching the right courses and really becoming a little more streamlined on what we offer.
But that should actually be a help to our districts.
Absolutely.
Right? Because right now, if you have someone teaching 9th grade Algebra 2 and a 10th grader walks into the room, if I am correct, I think that means that you can't teach Algebra 2.
It depends on their certification. And so that's exactly why we had EPSB at the table from the beginning and not at the end, because they really lead a lot of that work and those determinations. And so we really want to be in line so we don't have prohibitive issues occur, but really a true understanding of what can and cannot be taught.
So that should expand our district's ability to hire teachers that have that content knowledge and not worry as much about being bound by one grade or not.
That's correct. And it should provide clarity, even when you are hiring, to know what they're capable of teaching as far as certification goes.
That's great.
I think that's going to be helpful for districts. It is a shift because a lot of times we rely at the district level on calling EPSB to determine what courses can they teach, what they can't, and because we had so many, it was unclear. And so really it should be helping on the forefront before a lead report comes out saying that that teacher is not certified to teach that area.
Very good.
Yeah.
So we're working on a searchable database. That's going to be a little bit of time, as is the case all across the state. You know, we've been hampered by some budget issues too, and so that's going to take a little bit of time. But when we release this, initially it'll be in a PDF form, so I guess you can Control F for the moment. But eventually we do foresee having a searchable database that would have course codes, course titles, course descriptions, and the standards themselves. Speaking of which, that's actually what I just rattled off.
That's right.
Amanda, why don't you talk about how you guys went about this a little bit?
So with our course code structure, it's pretty simple, but it's a lot more information than we've ever offered. If you've ever had the opportunity to see the course code book, it's hundreds of pages with lots of codes and lots of courses, but it's never been quite as descriptive as we've had before. So in the new course code document, what we'll have is the actual code itself, which will be helpful for your counselors or those who are scheduling students, the course name, which is not an ambiguous name, but it would be very specific, the description of the course, and hopefully to include as well with the EPSB certifications that will align to that, but definitely the description of that course. And then after that, it will also identify the standards that are aligned to that course. And so that will be very descriptive and specific on the standards that are expected to be taught at that course. So again, it's a much more streamlined approach to the courses. We're not just randomly assigning codes. They matter. Because remember, going back to what Stephen had said, if we are going to be pulling this data on opportunity and access and transition readiness, it has to be accurate. And that's going to take the work of districts and KDE to work together to ensure that quality data, to ensure that it is accurate. And that's why we're trying to get ahead of this, to really provide you a system that is streamlined and easy to use.
And so just kind of a side note here with this. So we're going to be spending time doing our new graduation requirements this year.
Correct.
And, you know, when we went into any standards adoption, especially in the four big academic areas,
correct,
the assumption is that kids are going to get those standards before they graduate.
That's right.
And this is a big step toward ensuring that. Now, having said that, are we going to be precluding districts from submitting new course titles?
No, not at all. It's a good question because a lot of people are probably getting ready to ask.
Especially since we didn't prep on this one before.
We didn't, but that's okay. So we know that other schools offer various programs, and that's the beauty of diversity across our systems. But when we share our process for applying for a course, it won't just be a course, it would be a program. It would be a program to ensure that you have covered all the standards. So if you have an integrated approach to science, there's nothing wrong with that. We do have codes with that, but we want to know what standards are you ensuring that will be taught over that program. And so it's really important that you have a holistic view of how the standards are taught in your school rather than a course here and a course there, which got us in the trouble we were in before with the number of courses. And so it's going to be much more structured and aligned, that's focused on standards and not a code for one more course to offer. And so that's going to be the change on that piece, but we'll definitely guide districts through that. We want to promote that change and that difference to meet the context and the needs of their students, but it's still to align to ensure that the students really do have access.
And for our listeners, when I said we didn't prep, it means we didn't talk about it for this PowerPoint. Doesn't mean that we haven't been talking.
That is very true.
But, you know, one thing I think that's important for people to hear on that, Amanda, is the role of the counselor and the department chairs, I think, are magnified.
Absolutely.
In this, because now it's not just simply about plugging holes to get a kid to graduation. It's actually thinking programmatically and systemically.
That's right.
In fact, it may even mean that we've got to rethink how we're even advising students.
Absolutely.
Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And I would even go one step further to also really informing our site-based councils. They determine what courses, and so it's important for them to understand the whole. Instead of saying we need another math or we need another science or we need another, but what is really the program needs? Because site-based makes some really important decisions, and the principal has to lead that work and balance that. So, I mean, the key players are definitely needed in an area we haven't done as much with. So it is going to be some change and some challenges for that for sure.
So it makes us very happy that we have Robin McCoy on board.
Absolutely. Who
is helping us with I mean, I know certainly the first time since I've been here, but I think you've told me even since you've been here that we actually have someone here whose specific job it is to work with our counselors and maybe to help our districts see a different way that our counselors need to be engaged.
Absolutely.
So just a few things about our timeline. November 9th at 11, our DAC monthly webinar will feature the scope of the course code project. I would encourage you to have your folks online for that. Also on November 9th, the Office of Teaching and Learning will release 2 resource webinars. The first will offer the information to principals. The second will be a resource to be used by principals to introduce their teachers and staff to the upcoming changes. I love that we're doing both of those because as I hope by this point most people have heard me say, assessment and instruction are not separate.
That's right.
Those are, in fact, great instruction has great assessment with it.
That's right.
So I'm thrilled that we're doing that. On January the 10th, KSIS is user group training will go for master scheduling and technical staff. Let me reemphasize something that Amanda said earlier about this. This can't be a job for somebody the last half hour on Friday afternoon. That's right. When we start pulling this data for the first time in our new accountability system, we got to change what we're doing here at KDE.
Absolutely.
You know, right now, OAA kind of shuts down and they do quality scrubs. They're not going to be able to do this by themselves.
Correct.
And so we're having to change how we do some things across our agency. Districts are going to need to do the same thing.
Absolutely.
Because if we're going to do our data quality and data scrubs, and we're going to be reviewing all that, and we're going to help districts, but you got to meet us halfway on that. On January 15th, course code documents, webinars, and standard alignment documents will be released to districts for the 18-19 planning and implementation. And in March and April of 2018, KSIS user group training will get a follow-up on all that work.
And the real important piece about each one of these is that they're very much role specific. And so it really lines out what each role should be thinking about, how they should be planning. And we wanted to get this document out January because we know high schools are scheduling. And so we're really trying to be sensitive to the timeline so you can use these codes for the upcoming school year.
Amanda, if somebody wants to be a pioneer in this and they want to really jump on board and kind of start getting the ball moved out in the field, so to speak, how would we feel about that? If somebody contacted you today and said, hey, we want to be in on the front end of this and be our sort of our guinea pig.
We would love to come in and help provide support around how do you build the process, who are your key players, because every district's going to look different. And so really developing that process and forward thinking, what is this going to look like for us? How does this balance out some of the work? And how does it replace things we've done in the past? So it's not in addition to, but it's really replacing some of our habits we've had in the past. Very open to that. We would be happy to assist.
It sounds like, too, when you were describing some of this earlier, we're not just telling them what to do. It sounds like we're helping them think through a process.
Absolutely. We know it's a shift.
Yeah. Excellent. So this is, I'm not going to spend much time on this, but this is just a reminder that our academic standards are going to be going through a constant revision. That doesn't mean each subject is going through a constant revision, so nobody panic. But it means that every year, Amanda Shop is going to be working on a new set of standards. This was indicated in Senate Bill 1, but also it's just good practice that we go through and we look at these periodically, and that our districts know when this is going to happen. So in our current year, we're working on math and ELA, physical activity, health and career studies, and computer science. As we move down the road on all these things, of course, there will be a year of development, then a year of implementation. The reason why we put this in here is because with all this work and the lift that was done by our teaching and learning staff, going forward when we develop these standards, we're not just going to develop high school.
Correct.
We're going to develop courses.
That's correct. And so it's important to know that we will have an updated course code database, whether it be PDF or the usable database. Every year it will have to be updated because we will ensure that the standards in the course are together.
Yep.
And so that will be something that's different, but it will be updated every single year because we're on a cycle of updated standards.
Very well said. So our next steps for our superintendents is to assign your chief academic officers to work with principals to prepare for the course code rollout. Let me encourage our superintendents and our CAOs, if you take a blasé approach to this, I can pretty well guarantee you're going to get a pretty blasé response from your staff, which means you're probably going to get not the results that you want when it comes down to accountability. So I encourage you to take this and by this bull by the horns and really push this as an initiative. You'll need to create a process and a timeline for communication and scheduling. Again, making sure your principals, your counselors, your SPDMs, your teachers really understand this, and probably your parents need to understand. Now, they're not going to care so much about course codes, but they are probably going to care about the fact that their students are going to be getting specific things. Now, let's be clear again. Let's not give the impression that this is a cookie cutter. We are saying that every student has a right to be taught in these courses a certain way, but that doesn't mean that this is the floor. This is actually, I'm sorry, this isn't the ceiling, this is the floor.
Absolutely.
So acceleration for us to be able to really push more and more is actually a really good thing. You'll need to assign an Infinite Campus lead at each school, somebody that really understands how Infinite Campus works. We, of course, will have people here that can help and can work with your staff. And we need somebody to assign course code cleanup in Infinite Campus throughout the year prior to the KDE cleanup window. In other words, somebody's got to make sure that all these kids are in the right courses, the right time. And remember, with opportunity and access, there'll be new aspects to this. In elementary school, it's not just fourth grade.
Right.
It's fourth grade reading, fourth grade math, fourth grade science, because remember, you're going to have to report how many hours a week kids are getting in those. So it's going to be really important that you spend time on the front end getting that done.
Absolutely.
So with that, let me just end with just a couple of things. We're going to go into this new year talking about a new graduation requirement. And this course code and us assigning standards to high school courses is really an important issue. It's important because as we go into thinking about this, I think one of the things we're going to have to really take a hard look at if we're really going to close the achievement gap, we have to ask ourselves, are all of our students actually having access to this content? That means that there's probably going to be shifts in how we approach assessment in high school. It means that there's going to be shifts in how we think about ensuring that kids have a quality pathway to graduation. That this year we take a good hard look at individual learning plans, which I know, to be honest with you, I'm just going to be blunt here, most of us treat as a compliance exercise. Let me share with you that as we move down this path, that ILP is going to get drastically changed. But part of the reason it's going to be drastically changed is because it's going to become not just an individual learning plan, but it may actually become an individual assessment plan. We're going to take a really hard look at how we blur the lines between academic and career and technical education. We're going to realize that there are times that kids are learning things in CTE that are academic and vice versa. So we're going to take a good hard look at that. And this course code system is the first big step toward ensuring that we have an equitable system for each and every child. Now, I know this is hard. I know it's a big shift. I know it's a big lift. Every other metaphor you can think of, I know it is. But what I know about Kentuckians is that we do what we have to do. We do what we need to do for our kids. One of the things that we need to do, though, is realize that we aren't helping students by giving them a lower expectation. We're not helping them by putting them into other courses that hide them from end of course or any other assessment. Now, obviously, there are kids out there who have real and honest struggles. We know that we have other mechanisms for them, whether it's the alternative assessment and special needs or that we're using our English language learners assessments in different ways. But we have an obligation to really ensuring that each child has access to these courses and the full power and scope behind those courses. So we look forward to partnering with you. We look forward to working with you on this. But this is a big step, and it's one that I believe is going to reap big rewards, not for our districts and not for KDE, but for our kids. So thank you, Amanda, for being with us today and looking forward to hearing more about this. And thank you, all of you out in the field, for the work you do on behalf of our children every day. Have a great week.